the brief update.
Thank you, Kelsey. Hello, everybody. I just got back this morning to Orlando, Florida. I'm going to talk briefly about our trip to El Salvador, and then we'll open it up for questions. Um, so I went on this with Congressman Robert Garcia, Ansari, and Dexter. The what started this entire trip is actually we saw that Van Hollen had said he was going to go on a trip and visit. I made a post online saying if you want people to join you, I'm willing to join you so you don't go alone. Him and I connected shortly after I made that post, and we both kind of deducted that it might be helpful for people to come in waves to make sure that we keep the story alive, and that we continue added pressure on the Trump administration. And so Robert Garcia and I organized this trip pretty last minute, but organized this trip yesterday with a few different goals. We did this trip with the family lawyer, Abrego Garcia's family's lawyer. We worked with him on figuring out the best things to do, meetings to have, and set outcomes. But at the end of the day, the reason I went on this trip is because we've received hundreds of correspondence from constituents here in my district asking us to do something about this situation. As many of you may or may not know, I represent one of the most diverse districts in the country, a very immigrant-filled district with people from across the world that are proud to call themselves Americans, and many of them find themselves represented in this case and are scared to go to school, to go to work. They're scared that they'll be sent to another country with zero due process. And I wanted to ensure that we were stepping up in this moment because part of what makes our country exceptional is that every person in America and in the United States is entitled to due process. And the Supreme Court was very clear in a decision when they said that the Trump administration needs to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. Their defiance of that not it doesn't just show us that we're in a constitutional crisis really with an administration defined as the Supreme Court, but it also shows that we're going down a very dark road, especially when about a week ago the president in the Oval Office said he wants to do quote unquote homegrowns next. And he's talking about sending US citizens to prisons, gulags, and jails across the entire globe, which is obviously unconstitutional and illegal. So we went to make sure that we could advocate for the release of Abrego Garcia and others as well that have not received their due process. We went for proof of life and to check and see that he's healthy. The last time that the family had seen him and heard from him, not directly, but through Senator Van Hollen, was that meeting with Senator Van Hollen. No one's heard from him since. He's not able to speak with his counsel or anything like that. And so we were hoping to speak with him. We had various meetings, press conferences, and actions throughout the day yesterday. To highlight one of them, we met with the embassy and the ambassador. We had a classified briefing with the ambassador. Leaving that meeting, I can tell people that the Trump administration has not told the embassy to begin the facilitation of his return at all. In fact, it seems like the embassy is pretty much in the dark on this entire operation, outside of Abrego Garcia as well, which shows that they are defying the Supreme Court order. This is about due process. It's about ensuring that we follow the laws of this country. And that's why we went on the trip. We heard from the embassy that our request to see Abrego Garcia was denied. Only one reason they gave us. They said because it was not an official CODEL. So my hope is that as more people go, because we weren't the first members to go, we're not going to be the last. I can tell you there are other trips being planned right now. People will be going there to make sure that this story stays front of mind for Americans. And we've seen recent polling that shows that most Americans are with us on this because it's not just about Abrego Garcia, but it's about our due process and the rule of law in this country. More people are going to be going. And so the answer we got on why we weren't allowed to see him was that we went unofficially. And so our hope is that as more people go officially, that there'll be no reason for them to not see Abrego Garcia. And our hope is when, because there's going to be an end to this story. And our hope is this ends with him back in the US going through the process here, and not just him, but many of the people who've been sent over there with 0 day in court without any due process. We don't want to wait till we get to a place where citizens are being deported. Now's the time to draw the line in the sand. I was proud to go on the trip back in the district today. We have a cost of living week that we're also very excited about. But there's a lot of issues at hand here, and we were proud to do this. So I'll go hand it back to Kelsey so we can answer any questions anybody has.
Yeah, hey y'all. I'm seeing there's an issue with the chat box. If y'all could go ahead and raise your hand and I'll go ahead and unmute you in order. All right, Benjamin, if you could just restate your name and outlet when you speak.
Hey, Congressman. Yeah, this is Ben Weiss with Courthouse News. You talked a little bit about, the courts and this idea of a constitutional crisis. I know that Leader Jeffries has posed the idea or the expressed support for holding the government in contempt of court for this idea that they're not following through on the order to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release. Um, do you support that? Do you think that that's a good action? And B, what more can Democrats do in Congress to raise awareness about this?
I think it is a good idea. It is something I support. They are blatantly disobeying the Supreme Court order. The administration will tell you we're not disobeying it. We're appealing it because we don't think it's possible. And it looks like this is going to go back up to the Supreme Court. I can tell you right now, they are disobeying it. We heard directly from the people on the ground in El Salvador working on behalf of the administration that they have not been told to do anything in terms of facilitating his return. And that's complete defiance of the Supreme Court. If it happens a second time, when this decision goes back up, and I assume that the court will keep the same position, but be a bit more specific in the ruling. I don't think they need to be any more specific, but I think that's what will happen. They should definitely find the administration in contempt. Things that we could do in Congress. Number one, of course, going there is important. I spoke with Senator Van Hollen last night after our trip. I also spoke with Abrego Garcia's family, both very grateful that we did this because we don't want the story to go away. And going there is going to help us continue to put pressure on Donald Trump and our government here to facilitate his release and follow the law. My hope is that we'll see some Republicans speak out about this, at a minimum, speak out about the president trying to deport citizens to other countries as well. And our hope is we can pass some sort of bipartisan legislation on this, but we'll have to see. A lot of my colleagues haven't really had an appetite for standing up to Donald Trump, even when he's blatantly wrong. And so we'll continue to lift our voices on this and do everything we can on the ground and also in the institution.
Awesome. Thanks, Congressman.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll go ahead and ask you to unmute.
This is Chad Pergram at Fox. I'm trying to raise my hand here, but I'm having a technical problem. If nobody else has a question, I'd be happy to go ahead, or you can put me in the line here.
Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
Good morning. Well, thank you, Congressman. Welcome back from El Salvador. One of my questions is, you said that from a political standpoint, some of the polling was reflecting that, the public opinion was on the side of what you guys were doing on this front here. The NRCC has tried to make some political inroads criticizing what you guys are doing. How do you respond to those criticisms? And when they talk about, obviously you have a constituency that has, many folks from other countries or immigrants from other places. This is important to your base. But when you talk about, bread and butter issues, taxes, those types of things, some of those immigration issues don't resonate the same, yet this is getting all the attention. How do you kind of square that circle right now when you get that criticism?
Well, the first thing I'd say is the reason I went on the trip is because of my constituents reaching out to me in mass, asking me to do something about this. This is part of the reason I decided to do this action in the first place. But the other thing is, I'm a member of Congress. We have to be able to talk about and message and do things on multiple issues at the same time. I can go to El Salvador and advocate for the release or the return of Abrego Garcia. And this is more than just about immigration. It's about the rule of law and due process impacting a lot of my constituents. I can do that, and then I can come back home and have a week focused on cost of living because the cost of living has been going up. I can fight both Donald Trump's disregard for the rule of law and due process and also fight the fact that his reckless tariffs have really hurt the economy. I can fight these proposed cuts to Medicaid that Donald Trump wants at the same time. I can fight cuts to veteran benefits and our local VA at the same time. So unfortunately, there are a lot of things to fight right now that the administration is doing. And I think if you were to come down to Orlando and speak with people who live here, you'd see that we're doing stuff on all fronts.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and pass it to Rebecca. Before I do that, for folks needing help, you can raise your hand by clicking the react button on the bottom of your screen and then click raise your hand. And then I'll pass it to Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you. This is Rebecca with The Hill. I just wanted to get your take on, House Republicans denying you guys officially as a CODEL while the Ways and Means Committee took a trip there themselves. Just kind of what do you think of that dynamic at play here?
It shows this is, completely political, and this is the partisanship a lot of people don't like in this country. We requested an official CODEL because we knew that the government there could use us not going officially as a reason for us not to see him. We did what you're supposed to do. We sent a very respectful letter to Comer, actually saying this should be a bipartisan trip. Let's go together, even if you disagree with us. And not only did he deny it, but I encourage people to read the letter. He sent a very unprofessional, inappropriate letter that probably was written by the administration themselves, and sent that to us instead, which shows there's no good faith here. This is a joke to them. This is a heartless joke to them, which is really unfortunate. There have been zero Democrats on these official CODELs to El Salvador, and so it just shows it's a completely partisan issue. I actually asked to tour some of these facilities as well because Donald Trump is talking about sending citizens there. I want to see where he wants to send U.S. citizens. We were denied that as well because we're not on an official CODEL. And so it just shows that it looks like it's just Republicans that want to go to these prisons, that are being allowed to go to these prisons and take photos with humans and prisoners and people as the backdrop. And so we did what you're supposed to do. We sent the letter. We asked permission. We were denied in a very unprofessional way. So we just went on our own accord.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question on that? I'm just curious. I saw you guys said no taxpayer funds were used. And I was just curious, is this something you would be allowed to use your personal office funds for, like the congressional funding for your office, or you had to use your personal funds?
Yeah, we didn't use any MRA or representational allowance or any taxpayer money. You can only do that when it's approved CODEL. An official trip with a committee or a member of leadership. So because that was denied, we're unable to use any of that type of money.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go ahead and pass it to Christina.
Hi, thanks so much for doing this. This is Christina Mata with National Journal. Could you expand a little bit on who you met with in El Salvador and what have your interactions been like with officials from the country? Have they been forthcoming in answering questions, things about conditions in the prison? Yeah.
We had many different meetings. The longest one was definitely, or one of the longest ones was with the ambassador and with the embassy. Parts of that was classified, but what I can say again is that we left with the impression that there's been no communication from the administration to our people on the ground there on facilitating this release. When we were told that we would be denied to see him, we put together a few other asks in the meeting and gave that to the embassy, and they passed that along to the government. One of the asks that we put in was we'd like daily, if not frequent, updates of proof of life, how he's doing, where he's at, because there was no official word from the government what facility he was being held at, and it was a concern of the family. We're very happy that after we put in that ask, actually yesterday, a few hours after our trip, the administration actually filed a document in court saying that they're going to give some regular updates as to where Abrego Garcia is being held and that he is okay. And so we received the first of those updates, I believe it was yesterday, and we know he's at a facility in Santa Ana, or so the government says so far. So that was a meeting. We didn't get everything we wanted, but we're happy we were able to get at least knowing where he's at and that he's okay, because it's really important for the family, his wife, who's a U.S. citizen, and his two children, who live in Maryland. It was really important. We met with human rights groups, people who've been working on the prison conditions there. That was really important for us to understand what the conditions are, especially as we have a president who's talking about sending citizens over there as well. We did a lot of press. We spoke with a lot of different officials in the area, doing what we could do to try to see him, know where he's at, get this type of information. The good thing, and I'm not sure if I said this yet, but the good thing is obviously we didn't get everything we wanted in terms of getting to see him, but we're really happy that we were able to at least get some information and keep this story top of mind for people. But we're not going to be the last. And I think as more members go, we'll be able to get more. And eventually, our hope is that he'll be returned to the United States to go through his process here. And again, not just him, but many other people as well.
I'll pass it over to Tyler Olson. Just one other quick note. If you want to ask a question, just remember to raise your hand using the React function. And I'll also send a recording of this virtual call. Feel free to email Samantha Ramirez with a request if you would like a recording. And with that, I'll pass it to Tyler.
Thank you, Congressman, for holding this. Appreciate it. Obviously, you're back in the U.S. Congressman Garcia posted that he's back in the U.S. But just to confirm, the other two members who were on the CODEL with you, they returned to the U.S. as well, and they're not staying behind. And then secondarily, Congresswoman Luna posted on X last hour that she's been invited personally to meet with the president of El Salvador. Just wondering your reaction to that, and if it shows how this issue of effectively international diplomacy has become a partisan issue.
Yeah, I mean, it does show that it's become a partisan issue. He just had four members of Congress in the country. We didn't receive any kind of invitation or anything like that, and I know, he knows we were there and knew that we were there. As far as the other members, I'm not sure where everybody is. To be honest, personally, you'd have to reach out to their offices. But I returned this morning to back to my district.
Thanks, sir.
I'll pass it over to Megan, and if before you go, if you could just state your name and outlet.
Hi, this is Megan Janetsky from the AP. I wanted to ask if you guys had heard anything official about reporting that's been done regarding a potential expansion to SECOT. The Wall Street Journal reported it, I believe it was last week, and I'm just curious if anyone on this trip to El Salvador was able to get any more information about that.
We did not get any information on an expansion. We did learn and we're told that the facility as of now is not at capacity, and as of we heard as of yesterday could hold an additional 20,000 people. And so, I mean, that's not to say that the government there is considering an expansion. I don't know. I don't have that information.
Thank you.
I'll pass it to Linda. Linda Coffin, did you have a question?
Yes, I didn't know to punch the unmuted. I'm a constituent and I'm also a member of one of the local coalitions for immigrant issues that are happening right now. And actually yesterday and today we were at the city council and then the county council today talking about this. And I wanted to know if there are things that we can do locally. We were requesting, because of the issues coming down from the state and the federal issues, that we're trying to still get due process. We're trying to make sure that the families know where the people are going, and we're trying to make sure that they have access to their language when they are detained. Do you have any recommendations for what we need to do locally?
Yeah, good to hear from you, Linda. I mean, continue to make sure that people's voice, that we raise the issue, I think is very important. Part of what the family had mentioned to me and to us, and part of what Senator Van Hollen had brought up is, a huge tactic of the administration is to just do so much that we move on from a lot of these issues. They want to move on from tariffs. They want to move on from this. They want to move on from a lot of different issues going on. because it's not good politically. And so part of our job is to continue to talk about it. So obviously demonstrations, teach-ins, everything we can to make sure people understand is really important, but also bringing the issues home, which is why I've been speaking a lot about how Orlando is, culturally diverse and very rich diversity and a lot of immigrants locally, because I've had so many people reach out saying they're worried. They're not sending their kids to school. They're not going to work, this and that. And that's part of the reason I did this trip in the first place.
We'll take one more question from Karina.
Hi, Congressman. Karina Capabianco with Spectrum News. Was just wondering, if you've heard from other members, if you can tell us what other members are interested in, putting together a codel to El Salvador, or is it members of certain committees?
I don't want to share any names because I haven't spoken with them since I went, but I can definitely say there are a few trips that were being planned as of a couple days ago. People looking at doing official things, unofficial as well. So there's definitely still a lot of appetite for people going. That's why I've been saying we're definitely not going to be the last members to head over there.
All right, thanks y'all for joining it. Really appreciate you taking the time. If you need a recording of this call, please feel free to email Samantha Ramirez with the email that's in the advisory. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.